Welcome back to our study in the two letters that Paul wrote to Timothy. In our last session, we were in chapter 6 of the first letter, and we saw how there is always people in and around the church teaching a different message, asking questions that don't need to be asked or that have an easy answer, trying to stir the pot. And he said these people are always causing a lot of problems in the church, and we need to recognize who they are and turn from them and get back into God's Word, know the truth, which he said these people are actually deprived from the truth. And they think that godliness is a means to gain. In other words, they can use the church to get rich. So we're going to pick up there in verse 6 of chapter 6. But godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. That's the condition. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either. If we have food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all sorts of evil. And some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. It's interesting because he talks about the issue of contentment. And when we understand what contentment is, we can walk through this world very easily, knowing that God supplies our needs. And he talks also about what he calls the love of money. Not money. It's not wrong to have money. It's when that is your only pursuit and desire, and you love it so much you can't have enough. There's the real problem with most people. They continually want to get more and more. They're never, here's the word, content. And he says, hey, you didn't bring anything into this world with you, and you're not taking anything out regarding the material world. And he says, so be content with what you've got. And in doing that, you won't cause a lot of problems for others around you and for yourself. He says that people who get consumed with getting more and more money, and they love to have the riches and the wealth of this world, he says, by longing for that, they've wandered away from the faith. And so there's either one or two things, and Jesus said this in the Gospel of Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount. He said you can't have two masters. You're either going to love the one and hate the other. And then he goes on to clarify it. And he says you can't serve God and mammon. In other words, it can't be that desire and that love and that pursuit of money and things and wealth and expect to love God properly. And here's the balance. And of course, Paul's just bringing this out and explaining what happens. And he says those who walk away from their faith get themselves in a lot of trouble. And he says they pierce themselves with many griefs. In other words, it's a negative lifestyle at the end, and it kills them, and it's not good. And so we need to avoid the love of money. And when we see that creeping into our lives, remember that God has supplied our needs, and we can be content with whatever we have, for that is what he wants us to have. And that doesn't mean we can't have a lot of things or we can't be wealthy. It means we don't pursue that with a passion. If God blesses us, that's fine. If he doesn't, we are content with whatever we have. We'll pick up there in our next session.